Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya.
When did you first hear of Sai Baba?
I heard about him in 1970, that is approximately about 36 years ago.
And what were the circumstances?
Because I was those days in search of God realization and God realized people. I wanted to know the techniques how people become God realized. Sai Baba came, I was sitting beside that guy. He started rotating his right hand and materialized some vibhuti, poured part of it into his mouth and told him to get up. The guy will not get up because obviously he knew he hasn't gotten up from the chair for the last about 15 or 16 years. So he pulled him up and he got up. He started fumbling like this, swinging like that. And then he told him to walk. And he wouldn't walk, so he pulled him back again toward him and he started walking. And he took him in the room for interview. When he came back, he was perfectly a normal person. I couldn't believe my eyes.
Can we communicate to those who have now left their bodies?
You could, but it's good not to do it.
And why?
Because most people don't know that the attachment with the people who are left behind can prevent them from going their way up in the heaven.
Those who have already
higher
passed
level.
on.
So if you attract people by crying or trying to contact them, they'll be wandering around, in lower bodies or higher bodies around the house, and their progress is going to be retarded. So we shouldn't try. But once you attained higher consciousness, then you are in communication with anybody, anytime.
What do you know about Sai Baba that we probably don't know that you would like to inform us about?
Well, you know more than I do. So there's nothing that I can say more than what you already know. And believe me, to know more about Sai Baba, you don't have to live there for a longer time. If you live for a longer time, you are apt to have heard more rumors than truth.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Roy Ahlad is a longtime follower of Indian holy man Sri Satya Sai Baba. It was more than 40 years ago Roy first began his journey as a Sai devotee. His goal? The highest there is, God realization. Welcome to Souljourns. This interview was recorded in Orange County, California in September 2005.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Roy, thank you very much for agreeing to meet with us to talk about a subject that's a favorite for everyone that we know, Sri Satya Sai Baba. What's the earliest recollection you have of Sai Baba, and how did that happen?
You mean recollection, the knowledge, or meeting?
Meeting. Both. When did you first hear of Sai Baba?
I heard about him in 1970, that is approximately about 36 years ago.
And what were the circumstances?
Because I was those days in search of God realization and God realized people. I wanted to know the techniques how people become God realized. And in that quest, somebody mentioned about Sai Baba's powers.
So it was halfway through your life or more?
Approximately.
In India, where you were raised and born?
Yes, right.
Why is it that I'm under the impression that so many people, especially in India, have heard of Sai Baba? Why is it that my impression is that Sai Baba is so well known in India?
Because he was born in India, that's why. The proximity of his place where he lives.
But here there are many people, including yourself, who until 30 years ago had never heard of him.
Because I was not in quest of spiritual knowledge before that, very seriously.
Do you think that's important?
Yes, it is important. Otherwise, if it's not concerning me, naturally I will not take interest in knowing about it.
And when you first heard about him, when your friends and your acquaintances first started to tell you about Sri Satya Sai Baba, what was it that captured your interest?
Well, they were all talking in very kind of, superlatives which I didn't want to believe, but I thought that one day I will make it to that place. But first I went to other places to find out where the accessibility to those people who are God realized was easier. And the last place and person to come to see was Sai Baba. And when I saw things happening there, it was beyond anything that I had heard and I had read. And this was happening right in front of my eyes.
Well, you've got my attention. What were some of these things that you recall the most, that were impressing you the most about who this person was, Sai Baba? Would it have to do with his materializations or his words or something else?
Well, he used to materialize as he does today also. He doesn't do that often, but those days, at least in a day, when you are sitting there for approximately about 1.5 hours, you could see at least about 5-6 materializations every day. And Vibhuti, the sacred ash that he manifests, you could see that more often depending upon how many people wanted it. Of course, nowadays he comes in car and goes in car or some kind of bogie. So you do not see him do that very often, but those days, yes. But when I used to see that, I could not understand how he is doing it. And one day, I was doing some service work. I lifted, those days of course I was stronger than what I am today. I lifted a guy who was in chair and he hasn't gotten up from the chair at least for 15 to 16 years. Sai Baba came, I was sitting beside that guy. He started rotating his right hand and materialized some vibhuti, poured part of it into his mouth and told him to get up. The guy will not get up because obviously he knew he hasn't gotten up from the chair for the last about 15 or 16 years. So he pulled him up and he got up. He started fumbling like this, swinging like that, and then he told him walk. And he wouldn't walk, so he pulled him back again toward him and he started walking. And he took him in the room for interview. When he came back, he was perfectly a normal person. I couldn't believe my eyes. So I thought there must be something, because nobody told me to get this person from there except my own self, because he needed help. There is no one to take care of him, and I'm the only one who is caretaker. And I now see that he can walk as any other normal person can do that.
Up until that experience, how would you have categorized your understanding of Sai Baba? Were you a believer? Did you have doubts? Were you at all skeptical?
Well, I neither had any skepticism about it. I was neither a believer nor a disbeliever, but I was investigating. So he could have been, as I expected before, a genuine person or may not have been a genuine person. So I was keeping my eyes and ears open.
Then after this astonishing event, did your life forever change because of that one episode?
I was trying to investigate more and more about it, but then I had some knowledge about my own incident that happened about 1.5 years before I went to him.
What was that?
I had been to Ranchi, which is in North India, for initiation in Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga is a technique of some kind of pranayama. And I was coming from the ashram at night. It was about 10:30 to 10:45. It was raining and I was attacked by 7 thieves there. I was walking almost on a trail. There were no big roads around. There were no houses. And as I was going to be beaten by those robbers or dacoits, Sai Baba appeared from nowhere right in front of my eyes. I couldn't believe how a person could come where no houses are there. And immediately he challenged all the 7 people. He says, look, you're not taking a step forward. If you do that, I'll sort out everyone one by one right here. I couldn't believe my ears and eyes. And I thought, how come a person alone can challenge 7? Then he told me, you go. I didn't know how to go, because it was a new place for me. It was dark, it was raining. And in the meantime, I found one motorcyclist was coming. I raised my hand and I requested him to leave me at the nearest hotel, which he did. Now, I didn't know really whether it was Sai Baba or somebody, because I was in a semi-shock at that time. But then I thought that let us try to find an opportunity where I can confirm whether what I underwent was reality or was my imagination. And after 1.5 years, when I was given an interview along with other 2 scientists there, I was taken in by him, and he took me to a small little place inside, an annex. And before I could ask him whether it was he who saved me from being killed, he told me, "Don't doubt that, it's me. And I am around you, above you, below you, and in your heart all the time. And henceforth, don't be afraid, doesn't matter what happens, I'll be with you." He confirmed before I could even come out with the question whether it was he or somebody else who saved me from being killed. So this was the background. And with this background, I went to see him. And when I started seeing things like he's curing cancer just like that, right in front of me, then I know that he is a force to be reckoned with. And he is not like other saints that I met before elsewhere.
Roy, why do you suppose it is that some people receive his blessings with the manifestations such as that one you just described, and so many millions of people don't? What was it about your life that merited that exposure?
Oh, you mean to say this kind of help?
Yes.
Yeah. You see, it all depends upon him. And he knows our lives, our future lives, our past lives, our present lives. And he takes a decision what is to be done. And I cannot guess about that. But in a general way, I will say that if he thinks that you deserve, or by bringing you or keeping you back to life, keeping you alive, you can go ahead spiritually, perhaps his grace will fall on you. This is my interpretation. But he can do for other reasons also.
Should we all sort of live our lives fatalistically? In other words, if we believe Baba is above us and below us and around us, maybe he means for that freight train to hit us and kill us. Or maybe he means that it'll stop at the last instant. Should we not worry?
No, see, he does not take away our right to live the way we should be leading our life. And definitely it is not a wise thing to say, look, he will save me, so let me face the train and I will not die. I'm sure that this kind of thing he will not like people to believe and act on.
When something like this happens in your life, I don't know what kind of a young man you were before these events. How did they end up changing you?
Well, the change was not so much in my life and character. My thinking was to investigate life, which is still today. But what changed me was that he has the capacity to do what you want him to do with you. And he did ask me something very personal I won't like to say publicly. He asked me, "What do you want?" And I told him what I want. He said, "I'll give you both." And that only nothing to do with the money or position or power. But what he said, he will give me only somebody who is a very high degree of master or God. And he only can make that assessment, that statement. Yeah.
So this seems like a good place to ask you this question. Who is Sai Baba?
Well, different people view him differently, and all depends upon the type of background a person has lived in. You see, in the beginning I had faith in God, but when I saw people, those who were supposed to be godly, they didn't behave well, I almost lost faith in God who works with us. But later on, when I saw other saints, I found, yes, God does exist, and God has something to do with our lives. Now, if I have any definition of God in my mind, and if he happens to fit that definition, then only I will say that he is God. In India, there are 16 criteria for this. How do you know that somebody is God and somebody is not God?